What's up, everyone?
It's another video. You can see I'm not technically, I'm with a different background. I'm far away from my setup, my usual setup, but still, video should come out. And today we're going to be taking a look at the games played in recent Grand Chess Tour events in Croatia. And of course, many of you have been spectating that event, and many eyes were drawn specifically to the games between Magnus Carlsen and Gukesh, who had an insane clash at Norway Chess just a month ago, and now they're back at the board, but in a different time control, Rapid and Blitz. And let's first start by looking at their first game at the tournament, played in Rapid time control. So Gukesh playing with black pieces, and Magnus plays c4. Once again, he plays everything with white pieces. Gukesh can play any move with black d6. He can play c5. He can play knight f6 if he really wants to, but prefers e5, immediately challenging the center. Knight c3, bishop b4. Once again, there are many lines. Let's say I prefer to play g6 here. One of the plans is to go knight c6. You can also potentially develop g6, bishop g7, and then f5, knight f6, castle. That is the setup where you don't have to learn a lot of theory. So if you wanna have some weapon against English attack, play g6, bishop g7, then d6, f5 knight f6, and you get some sort of, let's say, King's Indian. Potentially you wanna launch g5, g4 ideas, and then launch an attack on the queen side. And white will go on the queen side, will go on the king side. Bishop b4. Once again, there are multiple moves that white can make. Knight d5 is one of them, immediately chasing the bishop away, but Magnus plays knight f3, attacking the pawn on the 5. Gukesh goes bishop c3, d takes c3, and now d6, taking the control over e5 pawn. And you know what? I actually like this position for black pieces, because I think I played it myself. It's kind of similar structures. The idea is simple. White have two double pawns on c-file. Their idea might be potentially to go c5 later in the game just to challenge this pawn chain here. While our idea from black is probably to take the c5 square by playing knight d7, knight c5, maybe go a5, and just make this outpost on c5 square for our knight. e4 was played, knight d7, and once again, you see the idea, knight goes to c5. Bishop d3, knight c5, bishop c2, and now knight f6, attacking the pawn on e4. Once again, there are constant ideas of going b4, so at some point a5 might be played. Queen e2, a5. So now the idea is if b4 is played anyways, we can play a takes b4, but we don't really have to do it. We can just get our knight back to e6, just to make sure that white have this terrible pawn structure, c4, c3, and let's say if at any point b takes a5 is played, we can just ignore this pawn for now, just play castle, and then maybe play c6, queen a5, or just capture the pawn on a5 with our rook. Knight d2, g6 was played, knight f1, and the idea of knight d2 is obviously to get the knight either to f5, but now it's blocked, or d5. So that's Magnus' idea, bishop e6, bishop g5. Now, as you might actually see, we don't have a dark squared bishop from black, so we have to chase this bishop away. h6 is played, bishop h4, and now g5. Of course, it's a great move. We're just trying to get rid of this very, very uncomfortable piece. Bishop g3, queen goes to d7, now f3 is played, knight h5, chasing the bishop, we're trying to take it, knight e3, and now knight goes to f4, attacking the queen. Queen goes to d2, and now b5. Honestly, I would try to play a4 here. I mean, it's not the best move, as it turns out by computer suggestion, but actually a4 is one of the best moves, and that's the move that I would honestly play in the game, because I'm just trying to make sure he doesn't have this b4 idea, because after a4 b4, b4, you can just take on passant, and the point is you're exploiting the spin on a file and making sure this bishop or this pawn cannot recapture, because now you're just using once again this a pin and you win the game. So b5 was played. Once again, something very interesting, just to maybe c takes b5, king b5, and try to, attack on the queen side. Knight d5 takes 6, and now knight h5 is a mistake. And slowly Magnus is getting some advantage. He has two bishops. Cash has to spend some time routing the king, and it's not very clear where the knights are going. While potentially White have a strong attack on h5, just h4, and yes, okay, knight on c5, knight on h5, but it doesn't really give you an idea of where this knight might go, and it's very hard to find the squares for them. Queen e7, rook g1, knight f6, and now b4. Finally, some action has been taken by Magnus, but b4 wasn't the best choice. Here, simple castle would give White a huge advantage apparently, but bishop g5 ideas won't really work because then king just goes slowly to the queen side, and then with the help of the rook we chase the queen away, and b now piece would be a huge asset for black. b4, knight d4 takes, and now knight a4 is played. Bishop gc, attacking the pawn b5 seems quite logical, but Magnus slowly gives the initiative to Cash. I mean, he could have played better moves, but slowly, Cash is he's playing good moves, and he doesn't give Magnus a lot of choice. So Magnus has to make precise moves in order to stay, content for the win in this game. d5, and in this, this reminds you of Sicilian ideas. You wanna push d5, and at this very moment, it works out perfectly. You kind of make sure you pinpoint to the b4 pawn. You're trying to strike in the center while this king is here, and it's not really obvious. Like, yeah, king potentially might go this way, but if white are not fast enough, let's say king f2 now, you just walk into d4, and black just win a piece. So once again, it's very interesting what Magnus can do, just to make sure his king goes somewhere. So takes, and now a3 to protect b4 pawn. Rook d8, placing the rook on the same file as the queen. Rook c1, rook d6, now bishop takes d5, and knight c3, discover attack on this queen. Bishop c5, knight d5, and now Gukesh has two knights for the rook. And once again, this king in the center plays a crucial role in who is going to take the initiative in this game. King f2, knight b6, queen d3, and now queen s6. Rook c5 is a blunder, e4, attacking f3 square, and attacking this queen. King d4, king g8, once again, not the most precise option. f6 was slightly better, but f6 is a hard move to make, because you potentially want to avoid some checks on the 7th rank, while f6 kind of weakens this. And if you play king g8, not a big deal, but you gotta be careful. Still gotta be careful. Takes rook e5, queen goes to h3, and now slowly Gukesh is coming. King f3, knight c4, rook a5, takes, queen f5 check, king goes to g2, and now very smart conversion by the world champion. King d7, knight f3, threatening this rook, threatening checkmate, so rook has to go, king c1, king f2, knight g4. Once again, you might wonder why king g4 wasn't taken, because queen d2, and black will simply be up rook, knight f5, king e7, knight c6, queen f4, and after rook a5, Magnus admitted his loss, and this is yet another huge win for the Indian youngster against the GOAT Magnus Carlsen. And Gukesh ended up winning the rapid portion of the event, and before the event, Magnus said that in rapid time control, Gukesh is generally considered a weaker player, and he would go into this match thinking that Gukesh is one of the weakest players in the tournament who he should beat without problems. And many people were speculating like Magnus, arrogant. Yes, totally agree with it, because you gotta take some action before you actually speak. And yes, great result for Gukesh in the rapid portion, but then something happened in Blitz. And in Blitz, Gukesh is having a lot less time than an rabbit, and it didn't help him at all. Like he had less time, and of course this would play, a bad joke with him. Because in the first day, he went 0 out of 5 in his first 5 games of the Blitz event, and then of course later in the tournament, he not later, during this first 5 games, he had to play Magnus once again, but now the time control is less. It's 5 minutes. 5 minutes is still a lot of time, honestly. And I guess in this specific, yeah, they play 5+3. So we have Ray Lopez on the board, knight f63, bishop c5, knight c3. Yeah, I see it playing more and more often. It's hard to explain the idea of this. Yeah, so first of all, this is anti-Berlin. So Magnus is not going for main lines of Berlin, castle, knight e4, and Lukash obviously wants to make potentially a quick draw. But Magnus doesn't want to do it. He plays anti-Berlin, d3, protecting the opponent for immediately. Bishop c5, knight c3. What I have in my files is knight bd2, and I guess I'm fine. And then let's say if d6, there is h3. I'm not quite sure if knight bd2, but yeah, maybe queen e2, bishop e3, but knight bd2 is one of the options as well, just knight b3 and then maybe a4, and then try to chase this bishop down. Knight c3, bishop c6, takes, bishop c3, yeah, trying to trade the bishops immediately, bishop d6, bishop g5, put in the spin, bishop h4, bishop g4, and now takes, bishop b7, takes, and we're getting kind of this imbalance, knight versus bishop. Fifthly, idea of h4, and bishop b7, castle, and let's just see what Magnus does in the following position. Obviously, bishop b2, rook b1, rook b7. Black don't really want to go for this pawn structure, a lot of weaknesses, just not the best idea. g4. First of all, g4 is a very, very responsible move because you always gotta protect from some sort of g6, f5. So g6 is played, knight g3. Now f5 is of course g takes, f5 takes, knight f5, and white are winning. Queen h4, trying to get this pawn, rook h1, and obviously the idea is to go h5 and trying to create outpost square for the knight on f5. a4, chasing the bishop down, a5, queen e2, rook d6, king d2, attacking opponent h6, king goes to g7, h5, and now of course just 5 is not possible due to knight f5. King g5 takes, knight f1, rook f6, f3. Yeah, looks weird, but at the same time, like there is not much black can do. Now Lukash opens f-file to attack the opponent f3, rook h3, rook h8 takes, and now it turns out that black have too many weaknesses. e5, g5, rook h1 is coming, and it doesn't look survivable for black pieces. Rook f6, knight c4, rook e6, rook b1. The idea now is to play b4 and a5, rook b4, and take this pawn b7. c5, rook h1, king g7, king f2. Now Lukash closed his own bishop, and it became extremely hard to play on. Knight a5 takes one of the pawns, king a2, takes, rook d6, rook a6. Knight b7, rook a4, b4. Yes, he created a lot of counterplay, but it doesn't help him to create further problems. c3, rook d7, rook c7, and with 3 seconds left on the clock, Lukash admitted his loss, and last game came, almost not to the end of the tournament, but it was all clear that Lukash is not having a good event in Blitz. He won't be in the last place, obviously, after a huge result in the rapid portion, but what we see is something that Magnus haven't done versus Lukash himself. Lukash goes for Berlin. What Magnus did to play d3, plenty Berlin. Play for something. Play something that is more playable, where you will have more chances, while in the following game we have castle, knight d4, d4, knight d6, d takes e5, knight d5, a4, knight d4, takes d5, e takes d6, knight d4, and famous Berlin draw. So, and just like that, the tournament has finished. Magnus is first, 22.5 points. Wesley So is 20. Lukash is in the third place with 19.5 points. Obviously, great result in rapid events, and then it was enough to create kind of space from the others to make this third place possible. Ivan Šarić, who was obviously the wild card in the event, he finished 10th. Fabi surprisingly 8th. Prague, I would say, surprisingly ninth, but as you might see, the event was quite strong. Top players. I'm not sure what the next event is. We have Sinful Cup in August. We have, uh, obviously, Sinful Cup is part of Ranches Tour. Then obviously we have FIDE Grand Swiss, FIDE World Cup, a lot of good events. Let me know what you want me to analyze next. I'm quite open to any suggestions you might have. I'll see you soon in next videos. Hope you enjoyed. See you tomorrow.